Hello, everybody. So welcome back to Unzipped. This is episode 3. We'll be airing, I don't know the exact dates, so we're going to be airing. So just so everyone who's watching knows, if you haven't tuned in before, Zippy Content is my company. What we do is we represent authors, entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants, everybody basically in the online space, and we find them interviews on podcasts. So we've been doing this for quite some time. We have a substantial network of podcasters that we work with regularly. And what this show Unzipped is about is basically just exposing our network of podcasters that we work with regularly, that we send guests to. So I'm just interviewing the people that we work with. We're unzipping our network, and it's a lot of fun. So I'm excited to get to know you, Larry. I know it's been a long time coming, probably a few weeks of us trying to get this thing actually recorded.
Man,
so
tell you what, I'm excited to be here.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, it's been a journey, but we're here. We made it happen. So tell me a little bit about your show. What do you have going on? What's the theme of your podcast? How long have you been doing it? Give me some background.
I've been podcasting now for about 3.5 years, and I was inspired to podcast by none other than the great Joe Rogan. Me along
As
with
so many are.
Exactly right. When I first started out, I thought podcast, I was like, man, that's just for like nerds, it's like playing online video games or whatever, right?
Right.
But turns out I'm also a big online video game player.
So, hand in hand, apparently.
So podcasting started to fit that mold. But I heard Joe's show, and I was like, man, this is kind of cool. And he talks to all these cool people, and he he just makes all these great connections, and I'm like, man, this is really cool. And plus, I kind of dabble with some stand-up comedy here and there. So,
nice.
I started picking up some comedians that were friends of Joe's. And I started listening to these guys, and I was like, oh, my God, this is glorious, because they were saying all kinds of bad words, and there was no filter. There was no nothing. And I finally found some place where I could do my style of comedy. Right, because I'm 46, so I come from the Sam Kinison and the Andrew Dice Clay era, and back when comedy was a little more risque than it is these days. Although I did just try to listen to Kevin Hart today at the office, and it just came out on Netflix. I was like, my God, Kevin, this is pretty raunchy stuff. But anyway, I did laugh though. But anyway, so I started going that route, right? And I still have a career. Podcasting is not my full-time gig yet. So the company that I worked for, I ended up getting a new manager. He is very reserved, and he heard some of my content. So we had a discussion. And he didn't tell me to stop, but he wasn't real happy about what was out there, even though our HR director loves it. She still listens to the show, right? So, but anyways, that's neither here nor there. So in an effort to keep things great on the professional front, I said, you know what? I'm going to kill that show. So I killed it. I wiped it from the interwebs. You can't find it out there anymore. I have every episode, so if anybody wants one, you can hit me up. But it went about 130 episodes, actually. And I took it everywhere from a podcast to an online stage show to a radio station here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, online radio station here down in Deep Ellum, which is kind of the cool place where everybody hangs out. And so that show was rocking, right? So, but I killed it for the betterment of everybody. And I thought, you know what? I'm done podcasting. So I kicked rocks for, probably 8 weeks or so, And I thought, no, I just can't do it. I just cannot stop podcasting. I just love it. This is the opportunity for me to get all the attention that I crave. So I started thinking, what can I do that will allow me to podcast, but keep it clean? Right. And I still wanted to be random. So I came up with, I didn't come up with it, actually. I took advantage of a name that I had used all the way since the MySpace days with a blog that I had called Readily Random. And it was just a bunch of musings that I had back then of me thinking I was funny, but I probably wasn't. And I probably aren't now. But I love the name. The name stuck with me. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go Readily Random with it. And we're going to launch this thing again. And we're going to launch it clean. And we're going to have a good time.
Nice.
So
That
here
is
we are.
awesome. Awesome. So give us a little bit of an insider's look at who you were before you decided to move into the podcasting industry. You know what I mean? Like, what did you have going on before you said, okay, podcasting is right for me? Like, what were you doing?
What was I doing? I was a drunk. No,
I can
true
relate
story.
to that. I can relate to that.
Was a raging alcoholic, and I had gotten clean for about maybe a year or so before I started podcasting. So I was still just kind of floundering around, going, "What is this sober crap all about?"
Yeah.
This is not. I don't know what to do. So really, I just tried to find out what's going on. You know what I mean? So
yes.
That's where I was before that. Now, before I became a drunk, I was a karate guy. I was mixed martial arts fighter back in the days before mixed martial arts was cool. And
yeah, I love it.
I've got black belts in several different styles and that sort of thing. So I used to enjoy getting punched in the face a lot.
Yeah. So what was it that made you decide like having a podcast is a good idea?
Well, like I say, it was just the outlet. It was the outlet at the time. And then I started seeing what that could do, because my first show was really on the verge of just breaking out. I mean, it was so close I could taste it, It was getting some really fat download numbers. It was doing really well. So I wanted to take that same success and use it. Initially readily random, started off, and if you listen to some of the early episodes, was almost a show about recovery. And survivors. I'd had drug addicts that had recovered, and recovered alcoholics, and abuse survivors, and a variety of different stories there. So the first, I don't know, we'll say the first 10 or so episodes, probably 10 to 12 episodes, were primarily revolving around surviving, and survivors, and just positive messages and positive stories, and focusing on that. But I still have those, and I think they're great. They're great to share those stories. But without sounding jaded to a degree, it got a little redundant, because
I get what you mean.
You're doing the same story every week with just, now don't get me wrong. It's a different personal touch, but it's the same kind of thing.
It's the same story. I mean, it's basically the same story, addiction to recovery.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to mix it up a little bit. So I started reaching out to just random people. I had I'm a big origami guy. I love origami. I'm just a nerd all the way around. So I love
That's awesome.
origami. So I reached out to the top origami artist in the United States. He's a professor at what's it called? The MIT. Yes, that one, MIT.
Nice.
And so I had him on, and it was kind of cool to talk to him. Just because of who he was, So that led me into talking to some professors and some PhDs, and just kind of got into the academia side of things. It was learning about all this other paths that you could take with your academia. And then it started getting into entrepreneurship, and that's where it really kind of took hold, was just entrepreneurship, and before long, I wrote a book. Exactly, right? So before long, I wrote a book. It went #1 on Amazon. I'm writing a course right now for Udemy. Nice. It's going to go #1 also on Udemy. I mean, I just know it is.
Exciting.
So that's kind of where it's taken me. It's been an interesting ride, and I don't see it stopping anytime ever.
So that kind of leads me into my next question, was what are some of the things some of the benefits that have come from it? You know what I mean? Some of the things that have grown from your show, and you know what I mean? So that leads right into it, books and courses and stuff.
Sure.
So continue about those things. Tell me more about that. What's come from your show?
What has come from my show is a network of individuals that I would have never had the opportunity to talk to or even meet in person, and even work with. I've talked to, on this particular show, I've talked to Super Bowl champions. I've talked to the top FBI body language expert on the planet that literally saved the United States back in the 80s. Check him out, Joe Navarro. He's a great guy, cool stuff. Awesome. And even just kind of silly guys like Ozark, the show on Netflix, the Ozark show. I love it. It's a great show. Well, in the first season, there's a strip club owner, and his name is Adam Boyer, is the actor. And I knew he was on my friends list for some reason, but I didn't realize who he was. And I saw the credits running, and I was like, Adam Boyer.
Crazy. I know that name.
So I went. So I went. I said, hey, Adam, just finished season 1 of Ozark. You want to be on my podcast? He's like, sure, dude. So, I got to hang out and kind of befriend him a little bit. We've chatted some on the sides of the show, and, it's opened up so many opportunities and so many paths that, again, just would not be there. I present at local business functions. I've done some speaking, anything and everything that is from a communication perspective. The show has opened up for me.
So that, again, you're leading perfectly into my next question. All this whole trickle down situation. Yeah. So my next question is, what are some of the results that you've seen? I mean, what are some of the things that have actually happened for you in your business, and like results that you've seen in your personal life and otherwise that have come from it? Obviously, you have great relationships. Is there anything that has come from those relationships? Do you have partnerships, anything like that you have going on?
I have partnered with several people in several different business ventures.
Nice.
I actually had the opportunity to work with some veterans, some VFW, some Vietnam veterans, to be specific. And they do hang out at the VFW, but yeah, they're specifically Vietnam veterans. And I've had some close working relationships with them for quite some time. Designed some t-shirts, some artwork for them, that sort of thing.
That's great.
And just give back in that regard. I was never in the military. I wanted to be. I couldn't pass the physical thanks to a little birth defect. And you go, well, that's kind of weird that you like to fight. I did like to fight. It's crazy.
Oh, no. So, you know what? I mean, I get it. Trust me.
Guys, you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to try to do it.
You're going to do it. Yeah, you're definitely going to do it.
Yeah, doing it well is one thing, but doing it is something entirely different. So, but that's one of the biggest things is the networking and the meeting people. Business opportunities have arisen. I did found my own company now, Readily Random Media LLC. So it is a media company where I help other individuals learn to get on podcasts. And again, my book's on podcasting. My course is going to be on podcasting. It's all surrounding podcasting. So I didn't want to paint myself in a corner with just podcasting, although that's my focus. So I didn't found Readily Random Podcast as a company. I went with the media aspect of it because I help people do like their one sheets and that sort of thing. And I don't know if you saw my one sheet. I don't know if I sent it to you or not, but it's fairly artsy. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's like a comic book. So I try to kind of put a spin on things that take it away from your average one sheet. Your one sheet usually has some diagonal colors and then the person and some bullet points. I want something totally unique that really encompasses that individual. So that's kind of where I that.
That's really, and that is really unique. Take it from someone like me in the industry that sees lots of one sheets. Yeah, exactly. That's definitely super unique. I love it. I love it. So, okay. So for the listeners that are watching, give them some pointers if they're looking to jump into the podcasting industry. So whether they're looking to start a podcast, be a guest on podcast, what are some pointers you can give them in terms of connecting with the right people and getting a good return on your investment? What are some things you would recommend?
Well, first and foremost, if you really want that return, is don't go out and spend a ton of cash on gear or equipment.
Yeah.
That is, my book is called 1 + 1 = Podcast. Sure, I'm going to slip a plug in there. The whole gist of it is simplifying the equation of podcasting success. That's my take. That's the approach that I take that I think is somewhat unique from others. When I first started podcasting, I wanted to figure out what was going on. And there were guys back then that were doing it. Some of them have moved on. Some of them have moved up actually as well.
Yes.
But everything that they showed was so complex. And it was really because they wanted to sell you a gear package, that was about $2,000. But so I spent $2,000 on a gear package. And and
it happens. It happens.
That's just the kind of guy I am. If I fall into something, the wife goes, "Oh God, how much is this going to?"
That's why we pay you the big bucks, because you have the experience. You've actually done it. So
exactly. So that's my biggest take for anybody that wants to get into podcasting. You really need two things. You need a microphone and you need something to capture your voice.
I completely back this up too. I've been a guest on many podcasts in my day, my 2 years in the industry. I've been a guest on several podcasts, and I don't have fancy equipment. I use my headphones and my microphone and my headphones. You know what I mean? And I've never once heard a complaint. It's more than anything, it's about establishing expertise and just showing who you are and that you are an expert in your field and that people can listen to what you have to say. And it's not about how fancy it is and how beautiful it's presented. You know what I mean? And I agree with you 1,000%.
That's my sermon right there.
I love that you said that.
and it's funny because you go to these podcast groups or these podcast conferences. Now, I would say that if you're going to join a podcast group on Facebook, Podcast Movement, that is the best group on Facebook.
Yes.
I have to say that.
I'm a part of that group as well.
I'm an admin, so if you need a posting thing, let me know. I'll approve it. No,
yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
But anyway, I think that's a great group, and they don't try to sell you anything for starters. It's just a group where you can go and you can learn some things.
Networking, yes. Helping each other out, yes.
There are some critical folks out there, but they're everywhere. So, but one of the things that has always set me off is that you will find audio engineers that are podcasters, and they will break down everything, every little minutia of your sound and your sound quality. I'm a guy though where I had a landscape guy that wanted to start a podcast because I believe a podcast can go with any business. It's a complement to a business. Doesn't matter what you're doing. Just get a little creative and use it. So if you
it's just like one of our podcasters just said, he doesn't make a bunch of money from his podcast, but he makes it because of his podcast. It stimulates business in other areas. You know what I mean? So that's why I always ask this question. This is really important. How do you make sure to get that return and actually maximize on that return? You know what I mean?
And it's just talking to your clients and I hate saying your avatar, but it's not necessarily an avatar. It's, that's a John Lee Dumas thing, and it's his thing. That's cool. That's his niche. That's great.
But it's legit. I mean, it's legit. Everybody has like a specific person that they're going to end up working with.
You do, unless you're me, and then you're random, and you go, how come I only had 5 downloads last month? No, not really. So niche is important. Don't get me wrong.
Yes.
But my thing is focus on what you are doing it for. If you're a landscaper and you're doing a podcast on when to plant your perennials, or I'm not a landscaper, so I don't know. When to put down mulch. Well, do all this, and you can do it. Record it on your phone. Do me, you, and everybody a favor, and put them in that moment. Take them into that yard that you're working on. Take them into that garden that you're planting for someone, or that tree that you're transplanting from one yard to another. And, let them hear some noise in the background. Let them hear you puffing and puffing and digging. And but don't just do that for the sake of doing it. Do it while you're giving good quality content. And that's just as critical as painting that beautiful picture of you being in a lush yard doing your landscaping. So I like to use
agree more. I love
that's where I'm at with the podcast, and the way that I preach podcasting is do you, and do it your way, but kind of also there's some guidelines that you should follow, but they're nothing set in stone. And don't worry about your audio sounding like, KERQ,
Right.
You're not a radio guy.
There's something to be said now. Like, everybody, with the way that social media is now, people can see into your life. And so if you're one of those people that's sitting there going, oh, well, everything's perfect, you know what I mean? Eventually someone's going to be like, bullshit, like something else is going on. Like, you've got some kids in the background with dirty diaper, whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like, you can't play that way anymore. Like, vulnerability and transparency is the key. I always tell people, like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like my life is perfect. I brand myself as a mess because most of the time things are like this for me. You know what I mean? Like, and if I branded myself as like someone who had it all together, I would end up with a lot of really unhappy people, probably. Like, people know that, like, we're all normal people, and I don't edit my shows. We're all, you have a cough fit attack, like, you're human, you know what I mean? Like, that's the way it is. I'm not going to edit that out. People appreciate it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So I think it goes that way with everything in business.
I think so too. And I think that authenticity, that's the word I was looking for. Is really what people grab onto these days. I would edit my podcast, and then I'd have episodes where I don't edit the podcast, and I would weigh the odds between the two. And I went for a long time, especially on my previous one. Why would I need to edit that? Because we're dropping bombs left and right, and they're not listening to this for top quality audio content. They're listening to it for the content.
Exactly. So, when I first became when I was becoming a guest on podcasts, probably like a year and a half ago, was when I first started becoming a guest on like a lot of other people's podcasts. My daughter was a year and a half old at the time. I didn't have help with like daycare or anything. I was potty training. You know what I mean? Like going through all these things, and I'd be like, oh, hold on, code red, and I had to like go like put my daughter on the toilet, and it would be like this crazy thing. And so it was like, you know what? Like, what's the point of pretending like that's not happening? Like everyone around us can sit there and be like, yep, I appreciate this. You know what I mean? Like,
I wish I'd have known this before, because I got home from work and I wore a hoodie to work. So I get home and I'm like, well, I better put on a shirt, and I'll put on my little vest here. And,
yes.
I didn't know what I was getting into with you.
Pajama pants on the bottom and like a blouse on the top. That's me.
I got shorts on. These are
yes, that is like, you're right up my alley. I'm telling you, this is like what we've been doing. I'll be like, oh, here's my button-up blouse, and I have like plaid pajama flannels on. Trust me, like we're all on this. Yes.
That's what I'm rocking right now.
I love it. See, that's what I mean, is that there's no reason to pretend like we're all, you know what I mean, these like perfect business people who, we go to like a big, huge office every day. Like we work from home, we have kids, you know what I mean? Like I get joy in working from my bathrobe most of the time. And I think a lot of other people do too, you know what I mean? So let's all just like put that out there. There's no reason why we shouldn't.
And maybe that leads us into the next aspect of podcasting, though, is if you go into it and think you're going to make a lot of bank. Here, newsflash. Newsflash, you're probably not.
Right.
I read a post today from some guy that said he'd been podcasting for 9 weeks and he's already over 35,000 downloads. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
How did that's not even realistic. I mean, to me, it's not realistic.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot.
What, now maybe he did a lot of prep work. But of course, just like you said,
there's a lot of factors, obviously, that go into it. You know what I mean? But
I went to his Facebook page, and there wasn't no mention of his podcast on his personal Facebook page.
See, the way I see it is, it's like the episode that is airing like today, that is going to be right before your episode that airs. He talks about how he makes money from like his podcast basically seeds money in other areas of his life, but it doesn't come directly from the podcast. And that's why I always ask this question, like, how can somebody make sure that they're going to be able to seed other parts of their life from their podcast, so that they're not just like spinning their tires in the mud trying to get this podcast out there and then nothing ever comes from it. You know what I mean?
Well, and
vice versa with being a guest. I think it goes the same way. You know what I mean? No matter whether you're being a guest on podcasts or you have your own, you need to have things dialed in on the background so that in the, internally you're able to make a return on all of that traffic that's coming in and actually monetize it. You know what I mean? Otherwise It's like, yeah, it's great to sit and talk on a microphone all day, but if you're not able to get a return on that investment, like, what are you doing? Podcasts take a lot of time. Like, it all takes a lot of time, so.
People don't realize what goes into a podcast. It really isn't just sitting here chatting. Now, depending on how you run your show or what you do for your show, if you do edit, that adds a whole nother level of complexity.
Right.
To things.
Exactly.
And an additional 2, 3,
sponsors
4 hours.
And ads and
oh my gosh, there's just all kinds of craziness that gets involved at that point. So it's very layered. It's very layered. But if your goal is to use your podcast to either promote your passion, you're doing it for your passion and your passion only, and you love it, whatever that may be. I love to talk, in case you hadn't figured that out yet.
Yeah.
You're the interviewer and you're having a hard time getting a word in edgewise. You're like, Larry, shut up. I'm trying to ask you a question.
Not at all. I do not feel that way, just so you know.
Well, thank you. But it's either that or you have to be using it to complement another aspect of your life, whether it's your business or whatever it may be. So you can't be missing, I don't think, either one of those, and continue past that. It's well purported pod fade of episode 7. Most podcasts die by episode 7 because people are like, man, this is a whole lot more work than I thought it was. This is,
yeah.
I'm going back to the bar,
Right. Exactly. If you're going on with I'm going to start a podcast with my best friend to tell scary stories, like it's not going to be worth it for you. You know what I mean? Like, no, you have to have an end game. You have to have somewhere to direct traffic.
You just throw a whole other layer of complexity. That's organizing. Friends, if you have a co-host, oh my God.
Don't even get me started on assistants and co-hosts and guests. Don't even get me started. I know. My team's like, Courtney, I am going to freaking, my team knows. We handle booking and everything. So they're like, no more.
The first show that I did, I had a co-host, and my first co-host, he left on me, and now he's in New York doing comedy. He's I won't say he's big time, honestly. He opened for, Cat Williams. Was it Cat Williams?
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah. And he's on he's on the DVD credits and everything, opening by Jamie Gravy. So Jamie's great, and he's still a great friend of mine. But then I had to find another co-host, and then he lives in Fort Worth. I live in Dallas, so it's like it's a long drive.
Yeah.
It's just holy shnikes, and then trying to get guests to come on. Now I'm lucky right now, and I'll tell you right now, having folks like you assist with guest suggestions is a godsend. It's a godsend. I'm telling you. It takes podcasting to the next level. It makes your life so much easier, because people ask me too, how do you find guests? I say, man, honestly, I'm lucky enough at this stage that I have guests that are pitched to me, because
that
otherwise,
is such a relief to hear. I can't even tell you. I'll let you finish, and I'll still explain to you why. But go ahead. Finish.
Well, no, I was going to go into trying to find the guests and reaching out to the guests and following up with the guests, and then second guessing yourself whether or not that guest would ever even give you the time of day, much less come on your podcast. And it's just how do you do that? Well, I used to go to Amazon, and I'd go through books and find authors from books and send them emails. It's just hours and hours of trying to find quality guests. But with folks like you, they're delivered right on your doorstep.
That is such a relief. Okay, so when I first got started doing what I'm doing, I was just working for my dad. He was like paying me hourly to find him podcast interviews, and he suggested that I kind of make it a business and I offer it to people as a service offering. And I was kind of like, okay, so what am I going to do? I'm going to offer guests interviews on podcasts on other people's shows and then charge them for it. Like, how are these people going to accept me into their industry? It's not even my show. How am I supposed to charge people for this? You know what I mean? So I was like really like hesitant and kind of worried about that in the beginning. And as I dialed in our service offerings and we like help people with booking and you know what I mean? I had podcasters that are like, Courtney, the only reason why I kept my show going is because you kept sending me guests. You know what I mean? And I would hear stuff like that and I'm like, holy crap, I didn't even realize that like this was a problem in the industry, that they had a hard time finding guests. I was just out there like, hey, don't you want to be on podcasts? Let's get you onto some shows, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? And I was like out there just pitching this thing to people, and it ended up being something that other people needed. You know what I mean? So it was like, to hear that still, even, it's been 2 years that we've been doing this like as a service offering to other, like to entrepreneurs, and to hear that still from podcasters where they're like, thank you, like it's hard to find guests, like it's a huge relief, because there is this like disconnect. You know what I mean? There are people that need to be heard, and there are podcasts that need guests. And so to know that we're kind of just nestling our way into the industry and like just a little bit of a missing puzzle piece that people didn't really know was missing, it's a huge thing for us. So I genuinely appreciate that. And we appreciate you being a part of our network and actually accepting these people onto your show and interviewing them and giving them the exposure they need as well. It's great.
Yeah, and it's just, I have nothing bad to say about it, honestly. You always send the quality guests. I have had some other offerings from folks that I'm like, I'm not saying they're a bad guest, but I'm just saying that they're not really the best fit for me. So
exactly.
And when I get guests like that, I'm going to give you a little review of services here. If I get guests like that, it lets me know as the podcaster that you don't really even know what my show's about.
Right.
You know what I mean? You haven't done the slightest bit of homework.
It's not a personal relationship. You're just like pitching people blindly. Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
And I'm not looking for you to call me on Saturday and go, hey, what are you doing? You and the wife do anything tonight?
Right.
It's still, you need to know about each other and what each other's buttons are. What works for the podcast and what works for the guests. And I think you guys do an exceptional job of that. And no, whoever hears this, she's not paying me to say that. She's not promising me.
I appreciate that so much.
Yeah. So
and my team, I mean, it's not me. It's like my team has really dialed this in and figured it out. You know what I mean? So we're all a machine. And so I'm just going to pass that along and tell them thank you. You know what I mean? Because they've been doing a great job too. So yeah, this is great. This is awesome. So, okay. So last question, just tell everybody where they can find you, how they can follow you, how they can work with you. Just kind of plug it all in basically.
Well, you can find me primarily, and this is one of my shortcomings, Courtney, is that I'm primarily on Facebook. Okay. I'm primarily on Facebook.
I am too. Don't feel bad. I am too.
Okay. I do have an Instagram account that I'm really starting to work hardcore.
Right.
I haven't traditionally gone that route, but even just since working it a little bit, I'm seeing some pretty decent returns. So
right.
There is a readily random group page on Facebook, or you can find me, Larry Roberts. I'm out there on Facebook. Really easy to find. Public facing page. It's all open. You might see some stuff on.
And we'll have those links. We'll have those links too to provide when this goes live. People can jump right in and follow you. So we're going to be sharing this across YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, so people will be able to jump right in. And we'll get all those links from you as well.
Yeah,
so.
I'm in all the places, man. So I have a website too, readilyrandom.com. So it's pretty easy.
Awesome. This has been great. Thank you so much again for being on the show and for being such a great part of our network and accepting so many of our clients over your way to be on your show. It's been so much fun. And I can't wait to work with you in the future and just kind of keep it going.
Right on. I dig it. Thank you so much.
Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and end this thing. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And let's see. I'm going to end the recording.
Was this live? Was this Facebook live? Were we live?
It wasn't live. I was just recording. We're going to air it next week.
I showed my drawers and my house shoes and all kinds of stuff.
Oh, no. Oh.